This week on Dance of Joy, we're talking about Laverne and Shirley, what kinds of jobs might require name tags, and we realize that the Department of Motor Vehicles has not changed at all in 30 years. All that and more as we rewatch Season 1, Episode 4 of our favorite 80s hit sitcom, Perfect Strangers. Hello and welcome to Dance of Joy, a Perfect Strangers rewatch podcast. My name is Sophia Javed. I am one of your hosts on this podcast, and joining me is my co-host and brother. What's up, Imran?
Hi, co-sister. How you doing? I made that up. Co-sister, co-host sister.
I like it.
Co-hoster. Co-hoster. Hister. Co-hister.
Coaster.
Coaster? No, I don't know. I'm going to stick with co-sister, but I'm super excited to be here and continuing this journey with you, Sophia. You know, we grew up watching the show and loving the show, and some of the deep dive research that the shows are taking me on. It's a lot of fun.
We still love it, and I feel like I love it even more now that we're breaking down these episodes and looking up references. Like, we're loving it on a whole new level than when we were 5 and 9 or whatever.
Absolutely. I mean, the whole simultaneous rediscovery and deep dive research going on with these episodes. It's just great. I can't wait.
It's been a lot of fun so far.
What are we talking about?
Good question. Well,
Balky. Thanks, Balky.
Thanks, Balky. Today we are talking about Season 1, Episode 4, titled, Baby, You Can Drive My Car.
Sweet. First of all, points right out the gate, Perfect Strangers, for using a Beatles song. I like this. It's just because it makes you go, baby, you can
sing it. Which is funny because with all the singing that Balky does on the show
he didn't actually sing this song.
Right. He didn't sing this song, but they got it into the title. That might have had something to do with some kind of copyright.
There will be a car-related song coming up. Don't worry. What is this show about? Well, if you would have cracked open your TV guide back in the day here, the description is Larry thinks Annie Bozo can get a license. So he bets Twinkie that he can teach Balky how to drive. Even in the description, Larry is super condescending. I already love this. This is great. I wanted to make one note about the TV Guide crossword puzzle that will come in the back of the TV Guide crossword puzzle. Sophia, you're Miss Smarty Pants. You like words. I know you're good at the legit, the New York Times crossword puzzle, the real one.
I do enjoy a good New York Times crossword puzzle.
I would kill at the TV Guide crossword puzzle. Want to guess why?
Because it's all about TV, and if there's one thing the Javed siblings know really well, it's TV.
I felt so great. My useless knowledge every week would come in handy, filling in TV Guide clues, TV clues.
It was like this was our calling. We just didn't realize it till now.
Well,
our calling was to do this podcast about an 80s sitcom.
Technology had to catch up with us. Is what the problem was.
Cousins should joke more.
Yes, they should.
That's what we're doing right here. This episode directed by Howard Storm, Sophia, and you will notice this is one of the few rare times in the first 5 seasons that Joel Zwick doesn't direct an episode.
Which makes one wonder, where was Joel Zwick this week?
He maybe had gas or he was just sick, diarrhea.
Maybe he was having a bad week.
Bad week for the Joel Zwick.
Maybe he had jury duty.
That's possible also. Can't get out of that.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can.
So it was written by Chip Keyes and Doug Keyes. It aired on April 15th, 1986.
Wow.
And Perfect Strangers, of course, was created by Dale McRaven.
Starring Bronson Pinchot, Mark Lynn Baker. Let's get into it, co-sister. Act 1.
Act 1, once again, this is like an early episode recurring theme. We open up at the Ritz discount mystery shop. We don't know. We're in episode 4. We still don't know what kind of store Ritz discount is.
Well,
is it a pawn shop?
Yeah.
Is it a secondhand shop? Is it like a Goodwill? What is it?
Is it an auto parts supply store? Because they opened with a hilarious physical comedy bit involving a case of bright yellow cans of motor oil. So they're on special also. So they got a special going on motor oil. I don't understand this store.
And it's like cans of motor oil. Like, when was the last time you purchased a tin can of motor oil on sale.
This is like that cartoony motor oil where you have to shove the spout in to get the thing to pour out, right? But I love the rhythm of this opening. You know, they're opening everything with physical comedy bit. So Balky, stamp, throws, Larry, catch, stack, stamp, throw, catch, stack. It's great until they build a pyramid and Larry almost misses the stamper, which I don't think he was supposed to throw that, and he just did it.
And they finish the pyramid one short. There's like a 2-can layer at the top, and Balky goes, "We're done. That's all of them." And Larry goes, "Oh no, we just needed one more to make this pyramid." A perfect setup for Balky to say, "Well, why don't we just take this one from the bottom?"
And he pulls it and he yanks it out, puts it on the top. It does not tumble. Larry goes, "Obviously, you don't know the first thing about physics." And he looks confused. And I to pause, this was interesting because it made me think of something. Why is Balky so good at this skill? How did he know? He knew the exact one to pull out. It didn't fall. There's a certain game that we used to play that would teach you this skill, isn't there, Sophia?
Well, it's everyone's home favorite, Jenga.
Yeah. So I found out Jenga introduced into America 1985. So it's possible Balky has been playing Jenga in the 2 weeks he's been to the country, or maybe they have it over
Maybe.
there.
I also feel like in comedy, though, it was a common trope on television and among magicians and vaudeville to have these like stacked either like champagne glasses or cards or things that were stacked in pyramid form, where you would pull one out and wow the audience by not tumbling the whole thing.
And like kind of cartoon physics, like the stuff wouldn't happen in real life. Gets kind of cartoony. Anyways, enter Ernie Sabella as my favorite boss, Twinkacetti.
And he has this great line when it opens right with a joke. And he goes, "Good morning, gentlemen," and I use that term incorrectly.
I use that term incorrectly. Ernie, dude, Twinkacetti never wastes time to get a good dig into the cousins there as he has a piece of mail, and he pulls out a little card, and Balky sees it, and he goes, "Oh, look what you got, you lucky son of a goat." Of course, he would get it wrong.
And we find out that it's his recently renewed driver's license, and Balky gets so excited, and he says, "Oh, to get an official document like that must make you so aroused."
I love it. You get two Balkyisms back to back. It's son of a goat. And you must be so aroused.
Yeah, and you also set up this episode right from the beginning as Balky considering this driver's license as this amazing document that's a sign of American citizenship.
Yeah, I mean, and he says it so much. Larry's like, "I wonder if mine is renewed," and Balky's like, "I'm so glad you guys let me hang out with you. It's an honor for me to hang out with you driver's license holders." And he says, they're like, "It's just a driver's license." He's like, "No, it is your membership card to the American dream." I kind of feel like this is kind of a big deal for him, and it's something we take for granted, and it's still a big deal. I would think coming to this country, that's like one of your rites of passage.
To get an ID card?
To get an ID card or a driver's license.
Yeah.
Specifically also means freedom. He wants one. He compares the driver's license to great American monuments.
Like the Lincoln Memorial, Mount Rushmore.
Mount Rushmore.
And talk show host Merv Griffin.
Yes, that's America's other offering is talk show host Merv Griffin.
Which is an interesting reference because it's one that people might not know about these days.
Dude, Merv Griffin was the bomb talk show host for many, many years. He hosted a talk show called The Merv Griffin Show, very popular. You might have seen there's a Seinfeld episode where he gets the set. Kramer gets the set to The Merv Griffin Show, sets it up in his apartment. But this show ran from 1965 to 1986. That's a long run.
That's a long run. I certainly don't have any memory or cultural recognition of The Merv Griffin Show.
Did you know the name? Did you know the reference?
I know the name for sure.
Because
he
produced
game
show. Yeah, he did like game shows and produced a lot of stuff, and it was active until 2007.
But apparently, to a recently arrived Meposian, it was a great American iconic show.
And then a hilarious exchange here as Larry wonders, "Don't you have a driver's license back at Mepos?" Balky goes, "Well, we only had one car." Larry says, "Well, my family only had one car." Balky without missing a beat. My country only had one car.
All of Mepos only had one car.
All of Mepos had to share one car, which is why Balky took the cart in the opening credits. But great timing and delivery. But
That was a great exchange.
Great visual, yeah.
Right.
One car on the island. And of course, Larry claims to Twinkie City that Balky can get a driver's license. Balky doesn't believe him.
He goes, but I'm not born in the USA.
He goes, it doesn't matter, Balky. You don't need to be born in the USA. You just need someone to teach you how to drive. And of course, Balky's going to ask Larry to teach him.
Can you teach me? He gets very, very excited. And Larry says, of course I'm going to teach you. I'm your friend. And he says, in your car?
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. And that's when Larry starts to rethink things.
Larry didn't think about this far enough through because he starts to fumble a little bit. He explains to Balky, a man's car is not just a piece of machinery. I mean, my car is very special to me. I spent years saving nickels and dimes so that I could. And then he goes, it's not that I don't trust you. But doesn't he drive that awesome, sweet red cherry Mustang we see in the opening credits every time?
I mean, that's all we know. He must have spent years saving up to get that car.
He saved nickels and dimes for that.
And he doesn't want Balky anywhere near it. But he has offered to help him learn how to drive.
Except Twinkie said he has no faith in Balky and eggs him on and calls him a yo-yo. And pretty much needles Larry into betting $50 that Balky can't get his driver's license.
And I just want to say $50 must have been some good currency in 1986
comes up
because
a lot.
The seriousness with which they take this bet is so intense.
Oh, well, Twinkie
said a lot of money.
Twinkie said he obviously just hates losing and losing money because he will make some money later, as we'll get to. But yeah, he's so tight, every little bit just hurts him.
And also, I might add, while they're having this conversation about making this bet, Larry has now shifted to another part of the shop, and he's stocking rolls, not really stocking, he's just moving them around, rolls of gift wrap. So now we have this shop that sells motor oil and gift wrap in the same shop. What kind of shop is this?
It looks like Christmas wrapping paper. Yeah, rolls of Christmas wrapping paper. I'm not sure who this shop is meant for. Who's your audience? How do you advertise a place like this? What is it listed under in the yellow
pages? There's always people in the background.
Oh, there is. It's always busy. This guy's always making money. So Larry's he gets so mad. He's like, I will teach him in my car. And Balky goes, you will? And Larry goes, did I say it? He goes, yes. Larry goes, damn. Turns away. Which I thought was weird that you could say damn in 1986 on family primetime television on ABC, which is general.
I'm not sure if damn was ever considered among the list of words that amounted to profanity. I looked it up for now, and there's a bunch of words that we shouldn't say on our show, but
yes,
I'm not sure damn was ever considered.
Well, these days,
way early, but not in 1986.
I guess, I don't know. It seemed a little early for damn to just be, but now people pretty much get away with saying anything on TV shows.
Right.
But Twinkie said he's loving this deal. He goes, you're on. It's it's going to be like taking candy from a baby. Then he goes, I haven't done that in a while either.
Twinkie said he does all the bad stuff.
I love the Twinkie said he catchphrases. There's another great one coming up later.
So Balky is very, very excited about getting the prospect of getting his driver's license, and he breaks into song and dance, the first one of this episode. And tell us what the song is.
Well, I had to look this up. It's he's singing Little Deuce Coupe by the Beach Boys, right? So it's car themed. They already did the Maybe You Could Drive My Car joke for the title. Little Deuce Coupe. Did you know what this song was? I didn't know. I had to look this one up.
No. I had no idea.
I did not know. And then suddenly the Balky walks off singing the song, and Larry just starts to have a migraine. You could see it in his face for volunteering his car. And he asks God if he made a mistake or not.
And by this point, he's back standing next to that pyramid of motor oil cans. And once he pleads to God, the pyramid collapses. And Larry looks up and he says, was that a yes or a no?
Of course, it's Balky. It's going to be a bad idea. Cut to later at the apartment. Larry enters with 2 paper bags full of groceries. He went shopping, and there is a noticeable plunger sticking out of one of the bags, right?
You know, they're 2 bachelors living in this apartment. They probably need a plunger.
Oh, my God. You have to buy a new plunger. You know somebody did something wrong. Who needs more fiber?
Clogging up that toilet.
Which one of these guys needs more fiber in their diet? I think it's probably Larry. Maybe it's Balky clogging up the toilet. But the Balky...
More fiber or less fiber? Who knows? Somebody's having problems in there.
You know, they had all those great cereals back then for fiber. They should have... Anyways, Balky's sitting on the chair over reading a book, and he gets up and he tells his cousin, I've been reading the Manual.
And Larry gets confused. He's like, the Manuel?
Balky goes, yeah, the driving Manual.
Oh, the driving Manuel.
It's hilarious because it reminds me of Faulty Towers. That's what I instantly thought of.
I know nothing.
It's John Cleese going, Manuel, I know nothing. So, I mean, come on, that's funny.
All right, so basically Balky has spent the entire week studying this driving manual, or Manuel. And he's memorized it inside and out. And he said, Cousin Larry, you told me when I memorize all this stuff, you're going to teach me, you're going to give me a driving lesson. And now I'm ready. And Larry tries to stall a little bit more. And he says, okay, fine. And he puts down the 2 bags of groceries right there in the living room. And he sits on the coffee table and he says, okay, pretend this. And he just like gestures to the empty space in front of the coffee table. He goes, pretend this is the car.
Catchphrase alert, to which Balky scoffs, oh, papa. Yes, you don't trust me in a real car? And Larry says, I think we need some practice before we get into an actual moving, life-threatening motor vehicle.
I think we should mention here. So we're going to go over this next whole scene is very, very funny. And it's this like learning how to drive in a living room in a fake car with props. This driving lesson in the living room was also done in a really funny episode of Laverne and Shirley about 10 years prior in 1976. I went back and watched that scene.
Oh, yeah?
It's very funny. They have some very funny lines that were not word for word recreated, but it's important to note that Laverne and Shirley was also produced in part by Thomas Miller and Bob Boyette, the producers of Perfect Strangers. There is a 10-year difference. In Laverne and Shirley, they are simulating a manual transmission, so they have a few more props in the scene.
Oh, wow, okay.
And in Perfect Strangers, we're working with an automatic. So a couple other things. This is not the last time that similar plots and situations will show up in Perfect Strangers from Laverne and Shirley, but also this teaching driving by simulation I feel like was a common theme in sitcoms through the 80s and 90s. Yeah.
I think you saw it a lot on a lot of those shows. And it's hilarious because they sit down and Balky pantomimes closing the door and immediately Larry's like, don't you ever do that again. And Balky's confused.
He's like, what?
He goes, you slammed the door. Right, so it's full of these hilarious little jokes, and to help Balky visualize things, Larry pulls out the plunger. That's the shifter.
Of course, so convenient.
Frozen broccoli. That's going to be the gas. And grapefruit is the brake. Of course, right? Makes sense.
Grapefruit.
He's built a little driving simulator out of groceries. And then he goes to Balky, start her up. And Balky just looks over sarcastically and goes, did you give me the keys? I thought that was hilarious.
So funny. Because Larry's making him imagine all this stuff. And when Balky starts to play along, Larry gets frantic and annoyed.
Yeah, he pantomimes going to the glove compartment and grabbing his sunglasses and putting his seatbelt on.
So then Larry's like, all right, pull out, start driving, ease up on the brake, press the gas, and now I'm going to throw you some emergency situations. And Balky's like, cool. And then Larry immediately screams, look out! And Balky goes, ah! And he curls up in a ball on the coffee table with his hands covering his eyes.
He's like, that's rule 1, never take your eyes off the road.
Never cover your eyes or something, yeah.
Balky's like, why'd you do that, cousin? He goes, well, the big yellow school bus just pulled out in front of you.
Balky goes, I didn't see a school bus. And Larry says, how can you miss a big yellow bus with large flashing lights? And then Balky starts to play along
Yep.
because he thinks this is ridiculous. And he says, well, I was busy avoiding that runaway baby carriage.
To which Larry asks, what runaway baby carriage? Balky goes, what school bus? I don't understand this game. It's so good. It's so good. Larry's just making it so difficult for no reason.
And then Larry gets mad, even though Larry's the one being annoying and confusing. Larry gets mad. He says, if you're not going to take this seriously, then we don't have to do this. And Balky says, no, I'll do better. So then Larry says, okay, let's finish this lesson. Then maybe we'll go for a ride in the car.
Balky promises he will be careful, and he starts to practice turning right now, at which point Larry's crying, signal, signal, signal. Balky throws his right arm out, hitting Larry in the head, knocking him backwards off the coffee table. Physical comedy.
Completely exaggerated physical comedy, but it works so well and is very, very funny. And then we just see Larry's head like slowly creeping back up from behind the coffee table, and he's just upset and fuming.
Balky's like, next time, buckle up. It's the law. Of course.
And scene. What a funny, funny scene. And yes, it is something we've seen before from 10 years ago at Laverne and Shirley, and it's something we will see again and again. But it's just like the kind of scene that you can customize to your characters in different
Absolutely.
shows.
And whatever little quirks they have, you can work in. And I'm surprised they didn't squish that grapefruit. I was waiting for like a Gallagher splurting grapefruit squishing.
Oh my God. I was so nervous about that grapefruit the whole scene because he was pressing down on it. It was meant to be the gas. I was like, that grapefruit is going to go.
He's like, not so much broccoli, less broccoli, more broccoli.
In Laverne and Shirley, by the way,
what did they use in Laverne and Shirley?
So they had tinned vegetables.
Oh, in
like
a can.
those motor oil cans.
Yeah.
They had cans of vegetables.
Oh my God, that's funny.
And she's like, the canned beans are the clutch. The canned
clutch.
corn is the gas. And Laverne goes, shouldn't the beans be the gas? That was the funniest.
Shouldn't the beans be the gas?
And then the steering wheel was a record.
Okay.
And the gear shift was like the kind that came straight out of the steering.
Yeah.
Where you had to like shift it off the side.
On the side. Right.
And it was a banana.
Okay.
And then all the foot things were three tins of vegetables.
So she's holding like a record and a banana and
a record
tins.
and a banana. Yeah.
So that's so funny that it's this a manual transmission
Shirley's
car.
teaching Laverne how to drive.
Because that's going to come up later in our Perfect Strangers Today segment. Just wait. We'll tie that in. But that's great. It's again, the show is honoring the greats, carrying on the tradition of great buddy
and
sitcoms.
Wasn't there a scene? Didn't the Cosby Show I don't know if we're allowed to even talk about the Cosby Show in today's political environment.
Hasn't he been canceled by case? Can you say that word?
I mean, Cosby Show being another show that we loved, probably won't be doing a rewatch podcast for obvious reasons.
Yeah, he kind of ruined that one.
I believe that Bill Cosby taught Denise how to drive
on the sofa, maybe,
or like on chairs in
the chairs in the kitchen. Yeah. 4 chairs. I think there were 4 chairs. I remember this. Yeah, so it's a thing. You do it. You got a family sitcom. You're going to do it.
But anyway, we're not talking about the Cosby Show, are we?
No, we are. We're talking about Perfect Strangers later at Ritz Discount Store. Susan is there, and Balky walks in, tells her he got into an accident in Cousin Larry's car. Oh, my God.
Oh, my goodness. What happened?
Now, before we go on, I'm obsessed with Susan. Who is Susan? Where is she? Where does she work? What is she? How are they friends? So, if you notice, there's been notes on doing some research on this that she is at this point wearing a name tag and appears to be a nurse outfit. She's a nurse? Is that what's going on?
I don't know. I wanted to ask you about this. Is that a nurse's outfit?
I mean, it's like a
lacy collar, like a doily kind of collar on her shirt, and like a cardigan type pullover jacket, but it doesn't look like scrubs. But I don't know what nurses' outfits were like in 1986.
I mean, she could have been like a volunteer at the hospital. I don't know.
She almost seems like she was like, it could have been an outfit for working in like an old folks
Yes,
home.
yes.
or-
I was just going to say that. It
like
looks
that.
like something you'd wear in a senior
retirement home.
residence center. Yes. Anyways, Larry comes
Anyway,
in.
she's something. We still don't know.
We don't know what she is.
or what she does.
She's a nurse. She doesn't work there. She's got a job as a nurse somewhere.
Yeah.
Larry explains that they were practicing parking in a parking lot. They were practicing driving, and a hurtling shopping cart came out and hit his car. And Susan goes, a shopping cart. And Larry goes, a hurtling shopping cart. Emphasis on the hurtling.
But that's not really an accident, is it? He's just over.
Yes, he's overreacting to just something happening while Balky was learning how to drive.
He's ranting at Balky, and this is another great exchange in this episode. Balky goes, yes, but cousin, you confused me. You kept shouting, hit the grapefruit, hit the grapefruit. And I cannot remember, is it brake or gas the grapefruit? And he's saying grapefruit every time.
Grapefruit.
And Larry in his like frantic neuroticism goes, it's the brake. It's the brake. Grapefruit is always the brake. Who doesn't know that? And what I love here is that Larry pronounces grapefruit
Just
the way
like
that
Balky
does.
Yeah. He does that a lot on this. It's
he
great.
does that a lot.
Yeah.
We'll see that a lot, but it's so good because to me it like validates that although Larry thinks Balky half the time is
He's an idiot.
half the time Larry thinks Balky is this like bumbling foreigner idiot, but he also really validates Balky's culture and his language and his whole experience. He doesn't mispronounce any of the Meposium things that Balky tells him about.
Yeah. And it's not like he's making fun of him
He's
mispronouncing this. And he does it, and Balky, there's a lot of traditions Balky still respects, as we'll see here, that Larry is learning about. And so Balky's really sorry. He pulls his face to Larry's hands. And he says, I was a fool to think that ever I could have a license like a real American. Now I will never be a real life cousin of my Uncle Sam. This is a reference, pop culture reference alert.
Yes, this is an alteration of a line from the song Yankee Doodle Dandy.
I'm a Yankee Doodle Dandy.
There you go. It opens with I'm a Yankee Doodle Dandy, a Yankee Doodle do or die, a real live nephew of my Uncle Sam's, born on the 4th of July. So Balky has changed it a little bit because they're cousins, of course, which makes the line funny. Now I will never be a real live cousin of my Uncle Sam.
And then Balky explains that according to Meposian custom, he has to go far away and cover his face in shame. And he pulls his jacket up and buries his head and walks away. And as he's walking out the door, he walks right into the door and goes, I hate these customs, which is pretty funny. But that's a really specific atonement for when you've wronged. He says, I am a car butcher. I am the lowest form of life. Such a specific thing you have to do on Mepos when that happens, when they have one car.
Yes, and that takes us to the end of Act 1 and into Act 2. So there was a lot of buildup, but...
Well, I've noticed these shows have large Act 1s and then smaller Act 2s that are usually
That's
same length. But it's a great, it's your typical 3-act setup.
And Act 3 is usually very, very short. At the end.
And I remember really noticing that in a writing format because of The Simpsons, watching hours and hours of The Simpsons. I'm like, oh, this is like Act 1, 2, 3, of course, duh. And then I looked at other shows and I'm like, oh, I get it why the commercial break is here.
Ding, ding.
Yes, I'm an idiot.
It's interesting watching them back now without commercials.
Yeah.
Those acts.
Doesn't mean anything
especially
anymore.
in the old shows. Are more pronounced because you just see the fade to black and then the opening up of the next scene. In newer shows, it's not so clear cut because we don't have that commercial tradition anymore.
Act 2 opens later that day at the apartment, and Larry walks in, and Balky is sitting in the chair with a stuffed sheep. We'll get to that sheep later. And he immediately covers himself up with a really interesting Meposian blanket, which we will also get to later. And now it's all reversed, and Larry is apologizing back to Balky for getting mad at him in this scene. But those two things are kind of interesting. We should make note of the stuffed sheep and the blanket, Sophia.
All right, let's talk about this sheep first. This sheep, we find out later in this scene, at the end of the scene, Balky, apropos of nothing, for no reason, just looks at the sheep and says its name out loud.
Yes, which is Dimitri. It's Dimitri the sheep. First appearance. Yeah.
And it's the first appearance of Dimitri. Dimitri will become a regular character on this show all the way through the 8th season. This is Balki's beloved stuffed sheep that he has brought with him from Mypos.
Makes him feel better.
As the show goes on, we'll learn more and more about the significance and the backstory of Dimitri. But in this scene, Balki, when Larry comes home, Balki's like sulking in this chair, hugging this stuffed sheep, hugging Dimitri, finding comfort in him, and also feeling terrible that he had an accident in Cousin Larry's car.
I just love the thought of like little Balki. Well, how long do you think he had it? Since he was a little kid back in Mypos, Dimitri, all the adventures he's gone on with Dimitri, the stuffed sheep. So also something else he probably had as a kid is also seen in this scene, and it's that blanket. It is a Balki's alphabet blanket. It looks like a handmade Myposian blanket with the English alphabet and the Myposian alphabet, and it's illustrated with pictures, and it's really quite charming and quaint.
It took me a minute to realize that it was the English alphabet, because it was kind of like upside down.
It's loosely,
scene, but it is the English alphabet.
I just love the illustrated quality of it, and then I think it's also in the opening credits. Do you see this blanket?
I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to go back. We'll answer that on the next episode. Let's go back and watch it again.
I mean, he probably learned English from this blanket and had this when he was a kid too. So Larry is trying to comfort Balki and resolve the situation, and he's trying to give Balki a pep talk. And he says, "You're not a quitter." You know why? Balki thinks and then asks, "I give up. Why?" Which point Larry gives Balki a pep talk that includes another song alert. Their rendition of America the Beautiful.
A very beautiful duet of Larry and Balki singing together, something they will also start to do more often as the show goes on. But here they're doing a duet, singing together America the Beautiful. It gets cut off eventually, and Larry starts throwing all these American pep talk idioms.
All the cliches.
At Balki. Larry says, when you fall off that horse, you've got to climb right back on and show it who's boss. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. Never say die. And I think there were a couple others in there. And Balki, one of my favorite word plays is when we look at these metaphors with a critical eye and get them wrong. Balki says the funniest thing ever. He says, "You can fool some of the sheep all of the time, but you can't fool some of the sheep all of the time."
So great.
And Larry's like, yeah, something like that.
Fool me once, I won't get fooled again. It reminded me of that where, what was that, Will Ferrell doing George Bush? He's like, "You fool me once, I won't get fooled again. You can fool me twice, but you can fool some of the sheep."
All of the time.
And so that's so funny. And Larry finally says he believes in him. "I believe in you, Balki," and he will let him use his car to take the test. Balki and Larry, they're both all in. And as the scene finishes, Larry's still having trouble actually letting go of the keys of the car, which he won't.
Which takes us straight into the next scene.
The driving test.
Yes, and the shot opens with the outside of a DMV building, and we see on the outside written the State of Illinois Motor Vehicle Facility.
That's what it looked like. That was the building. Larry and Balki are seen open in line. There's a bunch of people there, and Balki is convulsing like a leaf, over exaggeratedly, hilariously shaking. He's a little nervous.
Yeah, he's very nervous. He's taking this very seriously. Again, remember, to Balki, this is his key to the American dream.
It's a big deal.
Big, momentous occasion.
And then, as they're getting ready, Larry's trying to help Balki prepare for the test. Balki asks a super smart question.
Something that everyone wonders about. And nobody, I don't think in the history of driver's education classes, none of us ever got a straight answer to this.
There is no answer to this question, and it's a super good question. Balki goes, "If 4 persons come to a 4-way stop at the same moment and the man on my right has the right of way, who goes first? Because everybody has somebody on his right, cousin." And Larry thinks for a moment. He goes, That's why you buy insurance.
But what a good question. Do you know the answer? Who knows the answer to this?
If there is, somebody just has to go first. Like, if everyone is exactly at the same moment, you approach
First
the
of all,
intersection.
what are the chances? I think the assumption is not everyone will get there at exactly the same moment.
Somebody's going to get there first.
I guess it depends on like where you are in the United States. If you're in the Midwest and everyone's too nice, you'll just be at a standstill for a while.
Well, you know what happens is it becomes disastrous because the space and time will collide and there'll be a rip in the space continuity and the world implodes and all of existence wiped out forever if that ever happens.
Okay, now what if four people get to a four-way stop at the same moment during a pandemic?
Whoever has a mask on while they're driving with their windows up gets to go first.
I think that's the correct
because
answer.
that person, he's not messing around.
Yes. That's true. Okay.
Then we get to meet the gruff, cranky DMV examiner, played by a wonderful character actor named Eddie Barth, who's so funny in this. He did lots of TV back in the day in the 80s, shows like Simon & Simon, Murder, She Wrote, Magnum P.I., Night Court. Remember Night Court?
Night Court is another show we watched a lot of, didn't we? Who was he on Night Court?
I don't know. I think he probably had a couple of like a side guest cameo appearance, kind of like what he does here. He's just like a character in a
Night
story.
Court was another great show.
Yeah. And then more recently, he was in the Men in Black animated TV series from a few years back, voicing Frank the Pug, which is perfect.
Yeah, I can see that because he had this like distinct,
it's so perfect,
deep, gruffy voice.
His voice is great because at the beginning they step up and he's asking Balky questions and Larry is answering them like their address and their country of origin, and he's like, "Who's this? You ventriloquist?"
Yeah.
And I noticed, so Larry gives out their address. Hold on, and right away I'm like, I gotta look this up.
What's the address?
It's 627 Lincoln Boulevard. Now, here's the problem.
We are both from Chicago.
I am actually in suburban
You're
Chicago right now.
in Chicago.
Still live here. Lincoln Boulevard is a very famous diagonal street that cuts through a lot of the north side of the city into the suburbs. And so I was like, 62. So he says 627 Lincoln Boulevard. The actual street is Lincoln Avenue.
Right. It's not actually Lincoln Boulevard, but.
And unfortunately, that is a non-existent address as Lincoln Avenue doesn't go that far south.
So not only do we not know what Ritz Discount, what kind of store it is, we also don't know where in town it may have existed because they live, of course, above in the same building above the store.
That's so interesting that came up because later in the show, I have some information about the actual Ritz Discount building.
What?
Oh, yeah. Keep listening.
Can't wait. Going back to the DMV. Which, by the way, looks a lot like the DMVs in Chicago that I'm familiar with.
Yeah, that really hasn't changed much, even down to the attitude of the employees at the DMV. But it's time for the eye test, Sophia.
So funny. Just the concept of Balky taking an eye test. We already know it's going to be hilarious. So the DMV examiner, Eddie Barth, says, "Cover your left eye, please." And Larry goes, "Your left or my left?"
Balky says
no,
that,
he says, "Cover the left eye."
Yeah, he says, "Cover." This is important. Cover the left eye.
Balky says, "Your left or my left?" And he says, "Your left, my right." And so Balky then immediately places one hand over his own left eye and his other hand over the man's left eye.
And Eddie Barth is like, "Take your hands off my face."
And so he's still got his one. He removes the other hand, but he's still covering one eye with his hand, his own eye. And Eddie Barth says, "Cover the other eye." So then Balky puts his right hand over his right eye. Now he's covering both eyes with both hands.
Oh, silly Balky. He's like, "Uncover the left eye." To which Balky goes, "Oh, lucky break. I couldn't see a thing."
And Eddie Barth says, "What's the last line you can read?" pointing at an eye chart on the wall behind him. And Balky just kind of like looks at it and he goes, "Copyright 1963, printed in Hicksville, New York by somebody named Pat Pending."
Oh my God, Balky has supervision.
Of course I have. Don't be ridiculous.
How did he read the fine print copyright on the reading chart?
I don't know. He's got, maybe Meposians are known for like superhuman vision.
The examiner's like, "Well, I'll give you that one." And passes him, and now it's time for the written test as he gives Balky the test and they walk back towards a counter. Eddie Barth barks at Larry to go sit down. while and stay away from Balky so Balky can finish the test. And by the time Larry sits down, Balky is done with the test and he's heading back. What?
And Larry gets all nervous. He's like, wait, what's wrong? What's wrong? Do you have questions? Balky's like, no, I'm done.
He's like, cousin, relax. I may be nervous, but I know my G's and U's.
And Larry goes, that's P's and Q's. And Balky goes, I didn't know that.
I didn't know
Again,
that.
another quick,
Yeah.
very quick back and forth hilarious exchange.
G's and U's are, and then like phonetically, it's got the same as P's and Q's.
P's and Q's,
G's and U's. So brilliant. I love when they do that. Eddie Barth, the DMV examiner, done grading the test. Balky only got one wrong. Fantastic.
And
He's
Larry's
passed.
excited. Larry's celebrating. He's like, you only got one wrong. You passed. And Balky, however, is not
he's
happy
not done.
about that. You can tell he's like a hardworking immigrant, right? Because he wants to not have one wrong. He wants a perfect paper.
He knows that he got everything wrong and wants the guy to regrade it. And Larry's like, what are you doing, Balky? Let's go. You passed. And
which
Eddie
is so
Barth,
funny because this is like American attitude versus immigrant attitude. The
like,
Americans
check
like,
it.
whatever, you pass. Like, that's
Pass,
good
let's
enough.
go.
Just
good,
take
yes.
what you need to get out of it and move on. And Balky's like, no, it has to be a perfect score.
We're fine with a C+, but MePost, they were trained to get an A, and of course, the DMV guy regrades it. He goes, what do you know? I'm wrong. Perfect paper. And at that point, Larry's like, Balky, you got to be nice to these people. What if that guy was your DMV instructor? And then the guy, and Eddie Barth pops out behind him and goes, okay,
and
let's
guess
go.
what? It's his driving examiner.
He tells Balky, on this part, you're allowed 3 mistakes. Where's your car? Balky says, in front. He goes, in the red zone? That's one.
That's one. And so they leave, and then the scene closes with Larry just looking very nervous and fidgety in the DMV as he waits for Balky to finish the driving test.
Dun, dun, dun.
Act 3. We're back at the Ritz.
Oh,
And
this part is
Twinkassetti
hilarious. There's a great Twinkassetti bit.
Twinkassetti is on the phone. Great Twinkassetti insight to his attitude, his personality, his crankiness. Twinkassetti's on the phone. You hear him go, do I stand behind my products? Listen, sister, look behind your TV. Do you see me there? There's your answer. And he hangs up the phone and he sighs and he goes, those nuns are so pushy. So Twinkassetti has no love. He's an equal opportunity jerk.
Yeah,
he
that's
has
great.
no love for the disabled,
Elderly,
as we saw last
yes,
time.
disabled.
For the clergy, for the nuns. Like, he doesn't care.
No,
He doesn't care if you're American or Meposian. He'll call you both a yo-yo.
Call you a
He's
turnip
just
or a yo-yo.
like this
What
cranky
a
dude.
jerk. I love him. I love Twinkassetti. Ernie Sabella kills it as Twinkassetti every
So funny.
time. Then suddenly Larry frantically runs in looking for Balky. He has lost him. It's hours later.
He hasn't seen him for 2 hours since he left for the driving test.
And Twinkassetti, of course, doesn't care. He's assuming he lost the bet. He just wants to get paid. He goes, pay me. Just then, Balky walks in, looking a little shell-shocked and a little disheveled, needs to sit down. They get him to a seat.
And we find out that during the driver's test, Balky got confused and ended up on the expressway.
What?
And then Frank, the examiner, had a medical emergency that seemed like it was a heart attack. Balky ends up taking him to the hospital, and it turned out to just be gas. And there's this great line where Balky goes, nice guy, but he had more gas than Exxon.
Oh, man. Remember
So
that?
that's where Balky has been for 2 hours.
Twinkassetti still doesn't care. Oh, boo-hoo. He's enjoying the human suffering. And Balky actually goes, you're enjoying this. And here's a catchphrase. He goes, human suffering is my thing. I think that should be a Twinkassetti
Human suffering
catchphrase.
is my thing.
He goes, I don't care, pay me. Human suffering is my thing. And Balky, oh snap, goes suffer this. Whips out his license. He got it.
So here's something interesting that actually happens throughout the show, all through the seasons, is like Balky sometimes is so green and so fresh to this country and this language that he messes up English phrases and idioms and the cadence of things. But other times he's very clever,
yes.
very shrewd. And
Okay,
like to
yes.
say something like suffer this
Suffer this.
is not something that would come out of a very green immigrant's mouth who is newer to the language. I mean, it just feels like a very like sophisticated thing, but it works well for the scene.
Comedy writer Sophia, here's your formula. The character is knowledgeable when it is funny and not knowledgeable when it is also funny, when it is convenient. And you see that, yes, you will see this a lot. And this, everybody does this. Like, this isn't just Perfect Strangers. So Balky explains Frank was so happy he wasn't dead, the driver's examiner, that he gave him his driver's license, to which I was like, that seems like a gross misuse of his power as a government employee.
A government employee, he's like a DMV examiner.
Yeah, but Balky could be a dangerous maniac on the road. He doesn't know. He just he's like, okay, thank you, I'm not dead. I mean, I get it. He almost thought he was dying.
We're in 2020 now. How easy is it to buy if it's that easy to buy a gun in 2020, it must have been really easy to get a driver's license in 1986.
Oh, it was super easy. And it still kind of is. We'll get into that.
And Twink Cassetti is crushed, and he turns his back to them and does this like really funny, like crying yelp thing. And then he comes back and he like shells out the cash to Larry and says, all right, so my kid misses Christmas, which is
Jeez, Twink Cassetti. He gives them the look. He always knows when to get one last thing. And it's time for the lesson of the episode.
It's
Sophia.
lesson time.
Who learned what?
So Balky learned not to give up because Larry trusted him and Larry gave him a pep talk. He says to Larry, you made me stick with it when I was ready to throw up the towel. To which Larry says, beautifully put.
And Larry in turn learns that he should trust Balky more often.
A lesson that he will learn time
over and over again. Yeah, it's over and over again. But we're not done with the jokes, people. We got 2 more driving jokes coming. As Larry is fanning out his money, he asks Balky, did you put the parking brake on? And Balky goes, what's a parking brake? Got you! Pretending that he doesn't know what it is. Balky then says a totally awesome, heartwarming line. He goes, Larry Appleton, you are the best friend this Mediterranean sheep herder ever had. Which sets up to the last joke.
There's one final joke, and Larry's, flush with cash that he's won from this bet. And he says, what do you say we go out and celebrate? It's on, Twinkie. And they start for the door, and Larry asks, all right, where are the car keys? And Balky says, oh, they're nice and safe. I locked them in the car. And then there's a beat, and then they both sort of run out of the shop in a panic. Roll credits.
So, fun episode, a big moment for Balky getting his driver's license, and we got to meet Dimitri for the first time. It is kind of similar to the setup of the first episode, if you think about it, with the radio. Would you agree, Sophia? It's like Twinkie bets him he can't fix this. Larry's like, I bet he can, and then he fumbles his way up. So we'll see this again.
Interesting that they did like such a similar setup so close to
just episodes apart. Oh yeah, it is kind of funny.
But again, in the beginning, it was just 6 episodes or something mid-season,
right.
and
they didn't know
how long they were going to be around.
Yeah,
they were just trying to, get the first 6 episodes out.
But it is, an important thing still it's part of being an American, so it makes sense that they would do that.
Yes. All right. So let's talk about our favorite lines and catchphrases. We have "Don't be ridiculous," which is said 3 times, I believe, in this episode.
That's a good average. It's conservative.
We have at least one "Opopo."
Opopo. Don't you ever do that again?
Don't
we have one of those.
Ever do that?
Yeah.
I think that's about it.
That's really about it. I think we went through all the good ones as we were going through the recap.
We find out about Twink Cassetti's character. We find out about Balky and Larry. We're starting to love these characters. We still, Susan is still a mystery.
Yes, we learned a little bit about Susan.
Shop.
Something,
she wears a name tag. That's all we really learned.
She has a job that requires a name tag.
A name tag. Let's talk about Perfect Strangers today. This, of course, is this part of our show in which we think about how would this story be told in today's times. So you asked a very interesting question in that are kids now still as excited to get their licenses as we were?
Yeah.
Back in the day.
I feel like it's not a big thing. Remember, so the driver's license experience important to, from what I could tell, 15-year-olds and immigrants. Like, who else is getting, what if you were an adult and lived here, you didn't get, like, what, you would have had it. Because I remember growing up as early as 12, dying to want to have a driver's license. At that age back
it was
then.
Just such a big deal. It was like part of our school curriculum. It was like a rite of passage. We saw it on TV shows with teenagers learning in their living rooms and stuff like that.
But I feel like today's teenager, with the advent of Lyft and Uber and ride sharing and just even now in COVID, like nobody's going anywhere. I feel like they're not excited. They don't even go get it.
It feels like just even I live in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
I don't have a car. I live in the district itself. It's very commuter friendly and pedestrian friendly. The thought of driving, I do enjoy driving, but it's like, it feels like a chore when I can just call an Uber and get someone to drive me. And it's like Ubers and Lyfts are, maybe not now during the pandemic, things, the prices have gone up a little bit, but in the before times.
Yeah.
They were as cheap or cheaper than taking the bus or train anywhere.
You had a question. Are there YouTube tutorials for learning how to drive? Possibly.
Yeah, I mean, if this episode was happening today, would Balky and Larry just pull up some videos and watch instead of learning with groceries in the living room and a plunger?
Not as funny, but more efficient. And I will tell you this for a fact. Yes, there are, because years ago, my wife bought a manual transmission car, right? Because it'd been sitting on the lot for a long time. It was real cheap. Nobody wants these cars, because the cars shift themselves. Why would I have to do it? Why am I doing this for you?
Some people love and much prefer manual.
So let me tell you, she had it for a few years. And finally, I was like, after watching her, I was like, I need to learn how to drive this car. Because what if there's an emergency? What if for some reason
You don't know how to drive manual?
I did not at the time. I didn't know. So what did I do? I was like, wait, YouTube. Are there YouTube? Of course there are. I watched a bunch of tutorials on how to drive manual. And this one guy said this one phrase that after watching all these, everything clicked in. And all he had to say was, clutch is home. He's like, no matter what happens, if you freak out, if you don't know what to do, clutch is home. Press on the clutch. So I learned driving up and down from Wisconsin in her car, and I loved driving this car now. I was like, this is so much fun.
Yeah,
you feel like a race car driver. It gives you more
control over the gear shifting.
Right out the gate.
Stuff.
You jump out the gate real fast, you just feel like you're driving like a NASCAR or something.
I learned to drive a manual overseas when that was where that was the only choice, and I did it when I had to. I was driving these vans for this place where I worked, but I don't think that was 10 plus years ago.
Do you remember? Sure. Could you do it now?
I think I probably could. I remember the general concept.
It's like riding a bike.
But I don't think I've ever driven a manual in this country.
And then finally, what would be the Maposian version of Uber? I think it's that cart in the opening credits.
That horse cart that Balky leaves his village on.
You wave a flag and the Uber stops.
And you just toss him some money.
Yeah.
I've lived in some other countries and in sort of villages. And sometimes it was just like, depending on where you live, in some countries, you can just stick your hand out and like anything with wheels and anyone who's looking to make cash, some countries where it's cash poor, there's a lot of corruption or whatever. People are just looking to make a buck, and you can just flag down anything with wheels.
Nice.
As long as you speak the language and you have a little bit of like gut common sense to not get in like a creepy person's car.
Yeah.
You can negotiate right there. I'll give you this much money to take me, this far or to this place I'm trying to get.
And that's the other thing is all the prices are negotiable when you in those third world situations for Ubers.
Yeah, so really like Uber and Lyft is the first world catching up to what's already existed.
Absolutely.
The developed world, I should say.
They've been doing this. Yeah, they've been doing this for centuries.
Yeah, like catching up to ride sharing, which is very common in other countries where not everybody owns a car.
All those bikes in Amsterdam, you got to believe they're ride sharing. Jump on. I'll take you down to the pub. Yeah. It's cool. And of course, we already mentioned the DMV. Still the same. Some things don't change. So that's also kind of comforting. Some things will never change. And that is absolutely the DMV. Let's finish up with pop culture facts. Perfect strangers in real life. I was talking about the building where Ritz and where they live that we see in the beginning of all these episodes. Well, I found this blog and this article. The blog is IamNotAstalker.com, your definitive source for filming locations. This lady, Lindsay, just likes to stalk filming locations of like movies and TV shows, I guess. This article is from 2012. She went and hunted down the building that they use in that shot.
Oh, very nice.
In 2012. So in real life, the Perfect Strangers building was known as the Santa Rita Hotel, and it consisted of 4 stories. If I have pictures in the show notes here, I'll put pictures in our show description for the listener. If you look, this building now used to be 4 stories. It's still there. It's 1 story.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
So she explains, while a building being demolished in Los Angeles is sadly an all too common occurrence, only certain floors being demolished was something completely foreign to this writer. She did some further research on the subject and discovered that a semi-common practice in LA when repairing buildings that suffer from earthquake damage is to just remove the top floors. But she was shocked that they were able to remove the top floors and not damage the building.
Which makes sense to me because I'm looking at these pictures that, again, we'll put in the show notes. And I've been to LA only a couple times.
There's no tall buildings there.
But yeah, the
Right?
picture with the 1 floor looks a lot more like today's LA than the 4-story building.
That 4-story building would not have been earthquake friendly for long. That's for sure. But and then the Ritz is now something called choice handbags. In 2012, anyways, it was. So this shot was only used in the first 2 seasons, and when we get to season 3, I will give you information on that building that they use because it does change.
Stick with us till season 3 to find out more.
Well, we haven't even got to the fun seasons yet, man. Season 2 and 3 are
so much fun.
Well,
we're already having fun now, but it's going to get so much better. So that was season 1, episode 4, Baby You Can Drive My Car. If you enjoyed this show, please be in touch with us. Find us, follow us, like us, subscribe to us. We're on all the podcast apps. And we'd love to hear from you. And how can we hear from them, Imran?
Oh, we want to literally hear from you, listener. I've set up an account for us at a website called SpeakPipe. What is SpeakPipe? It's an easy way from your phone to send us a 90-second voice question or comment. And we'll play it on the air. You part of the show, and we can, answer your question. All you got to do is go to speakpipe.com/danceofjoypod. And that link also will be in the show notes. Make sure you subscribe, just like Sophia said, so you don't miss an episode. Because next episode, we are going to get a lesson in the banking system.
Oh, that's very useful. I mean, I was born and raised here, and I still have problems with the banking system.
He asked another brilliant question. But you can also just email us. You can record a voice memo on your phone and email it right to us, danceofjoypod@gmail.com.
You can check out our website at danceofjoypod.com. Follow us on Twitter, Dance of Joy Pod. We're on Facebook, again, Dance of Joy Pod. And guess what we are on Instagram? Dance of Joy Pod.
I was going to say that. Also, a lovely Facebook group where we can hang out, interact, share our favorite lines. We want to get to know each and every one of you listeners. Thanks for listening to Dance of Joy. And now, Sophia, we must do the Dance of Joy.
Now we are so happy we do the Dance of Joy.
Die, 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 die.